Right, onwards to Elm's lab. Not that we've been gone for all that long. Yes, we did. Little early in both of our Pokemon careers to call us a wimp. Ah, yes, send a completely untrained Pokemon against someone who has had time to do a few level-ups before meeting you. At least Gary in the first generation got his at the exact same time as the player, so things were precisely even. Sure, it's still one-on-one, and he did still choose a Pokemon that has a type advantage against us, but it's not like Totodile knows any water moves just yet. All he's got are Tackle and Leer. We don't need to bother with Smokescreen or any other, stat moves. Just constantly tackle him. Oh, that critical really isn't doing him any favors. And neither is the parry Cramash was holding. This is pretty one-sided against him. And considering the crap he was saying before the fight, that is just embarrassing. And there we go. Cramash has taken down his first trained Pokemon. Much like with my first generation Pokemon playthrough, I'm going to keep track of that, and hopefully with more accuracy than I had through the entirety of the first gen Let's Play. Sorry, not gonna call you the Riddler. I'm gonna come up with a better name for you when we actually have to make a decision later on. Anyway, now that battle's over, time to heal and then get back to New Barktown. Considering the 2 level advantage, we took more of a beating than I was expecting, but it was still pretty firmly in our favor. I suppose a 2 level difference isn't all that much, even at this low level state. Right, we're back, Professor. I don't suppose you know how eggs work, do you? Yeah, we ran into that guy on the way here. He could certainly talk a good game, that's for sure. And to be fair, both he and the first generation rival are the only ones who actually try to be antagonistic towards the player. Anyway, I typically call the second gen rival Axel since, well, it's easy to mispronounce his asshole, and I'm not quite that direct about that sort of thing. And I'm also not really a fan of calling him Silver, since I could be playing the Silver version. Well, and I'm also not kind of a fan of the Kingdom Hearts convoluted story, and I distinctly remember there being a character called Axel that I was supposed to feel sorry for at a major story moment. I get what they were going for in Kingdom Hearts, but it just didn't have any real impact for me at the time. I really hope he's more incredulous of Oak happening to be there than learning of the existence of Pokemon breeding. He's a frickin' professor. He should know how the creatures he's researching just reproduce. I know this was the first generation that breeding mechanics came in, but still. And honestly, I didn't give a damn about either of those things as a kid. I was just constantly saying, give me my balls, I want my Pokeballs. And I'm sure it's going to be a road with the occasional defeat along the way, especially with how I set things up for the occasional Pokemon Stadium episodes. Every time we beat a gym, I'm going back to the stadium, unless it starts getting too damn depressing. Thank you. It really felt annoying to not have them this early on. Again, I know that we didn't have them early on in the first generation as well, but that was excusable because it was the absolute first Pokemon game ever made. Very informative, sir. I would never have guessed that was the case. And we've finally gotten the ability to gain even more Pokemon to go with it. And yeah, I'm just too eager to get that part of the game started. This is an interesting idea that they never revisited ever again, as far as I know. The only reason they're even gonna bother bringing it back in the Heart Gold and Soul Silver remakes is simply because it's already considered a major part of the second generation. It would be a little awkward to have a game set in Johto without your mom getting a portion of the money you earn in battle and spending it on random things. But you know what's even more awkward? I can't even find a sandwich to eat on the road. Not allowed to grab a drink from the fridge. Well, at least Mom keeps things clean, that's something. Now it's time to hit the road. I know we're gonna have to have a reason to come back here later, but we're still not gonna have much reason to stick around and talk to anyone other than the professor. Yes, this is our friendly neighborhood Pokeball tutorial. May as well go through it since he's being friendly about it. Right, this seems to be another example where he's not even gonna try weakening the Pokemon as he catches it. At least the old man in the first game was capturing a basic bug. I'm pretty sure that a Rattata deserves more respect. While I've never once taken a Beedrill or a Butterfree all the way to the end of the game, I have on occasion taken something like a Fearow or a Raticate. They're not absolute powerhouses, but they're still pretty respectable in several ways in my opinion. Though it looks like our first catch is going to be a Sentret. A lot of people use Sentret and its evolution as HM slaves. I'm not really a fan of handling things that way, though. I try to have it as 2 HM moves at most per Pokemon, though some generations that's just not possible. Considering it seems to stand on its tail, stomping the ground with it is essentially jumping. He may not end up being the absolute smallest of our team, but I'm still gonna call him Stuart for Stuart Little. It's just the first thing that came to mind. Let's get him on the front line, so he's always gonna be gaining experience. Kind of a shame that you don't gain experience from Pokemon you capture in a ball until around the Switch generation. But by then, they seemed to feel like there was something inherently wrong with grinding in general, and even had the permanent experience shares on, so everyone in your team was getting stronger even if only one bothered fighting. Granted, grinding is a rather annoying part of turn-based games, and it is certainly gonna get frustrating as we go through this game. But there have to be better ways of making things more entertaining than just deciding to remove one of the more basic forms of padding, especially since said padding is one of the best ways to make the player get more familiar with the characters or creatures they're working with. One of the things I like to do in a Pokemon game is to keep the team pretty close to the same level whenever possible. When everyone has separate experience points gains, that means that sometimes I'm going to end up using someone who's weak to the wild encounters in a given area, which is one of the reasons I'm never going to do a Nuzlocke. I've got my own little self-imposed challenges and gimmicks I give myself in a given Pokemon run to help make things a little more interesting. Yeah. Definitely gonna be the return of Mothra in this game, even if I'm very unlikely to use him in the first gym. It's one thing to use a Psychic Butterfly in a rock gym. It's another entirely to send one out in a goddamn flying gym. Birds aren't exactly known for being friendly to butterflies. That actually reminds me of something I saw one time while waiting for a train. A bird was chasing a moth, don't know the exact species of either participant, but the bug managed to maneuver to the other side of the tracks just as a train was arriving. The bird ended up taking a nasty-looking bump. He didn't outright die there and then, but he didn't seem to have the ability to get back in the air again after that hit. As soon as he got his bearings again, he basically started running after the bug some more, like the world's smallest ostrich. I have no clue how that competition between predator and prey ended. My train arrived a bit too soon for me to witness a finish, but I assume the bug managed to get away and the bird would either end up getting sent to a vet by some well-meaning random person, or end up starving to death before his wing could heal. Actual nature is pretty damn harsh, that's for sure. Yet, some of the best Pokemon, in my opinion, are generally the ones that borrow a lot from nature. For example, I like Butterfree more than Scyther. I know Scyther is based off of praying mantis, but actual blades for arms? That feels like it would fit better for some Tyranid/Zerg-inspired biological horror, not to the generally pretty peaceful Pokemon world. Really wish I could like Pidgeys more, especially since those birds have 3 forms as opposed to Spearows 2. But I just plain prefer the other line of Generation 1 basic birds. It feels like a bit of a shaky thing to make some of my team decisions based on pure appearance preferences, but hey, it's about as valid as anything else, really. Especially when you're doing things in a single player and not considering anything involving the competitive scene. Anyway, I know I've used that name for a Pidgey before, but Balaram is something I remember from a multiplayer-focused Lord of the Rings game for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 generation of consoles. I don't really remember the name of that game off the top of my head. All I remember is that it was fun enough for single player and kind of memorable, but there was this annoying section where it became pretty much impossible for me to complete solo, because they stacked the odds assuming that you would have 3 players available. It's actually kind of funny that I don't remember the names of the actual playable characters in it, just the name of the eagle you at one point rescue and then get to help for a good chunk of the game. I suppose a Gimli, Aragorn, and Arwen copy trio felt less interesting to me than the talking bird. Yeesh! Nearly taken down by a worm. I know he's low level, but still, that's pretty embarrassing. Not that a better performance would change the fact that I'm planning on replacing Balaram and Mothra at the earliest opportunity. Sure, they're good for filling in the numbers at the start, but I'm just not feeling it in terms of being more permanent members of the team. I'm a bit more on the fence with Stuart, though. On the one hand, as a normal type, he's able to learn a massive number of moves. Even though he can only have 4 stored. On the other hand, I really don't want to have an HM slave as a permanent member of our 6-mon team, and I'd probably be pretty tempted to turn Stuart into just that. Hell, it's probably going to be impossible to not have an HM slave in this game since, well, I think there are 3 water-based HMs if I remember correctly. Surf, Whirlpool, and Waterfall. I'm kind of hoping I'm misremembering and that's a mistake that was made in a later generation. Maybe Generation 3, since there's so many water routes there. Though maybe I'm both right and wrong in that there are still 3 water-focused HMs in the next generation, and there are 3 for this generation. But that's a worry for us in the future, though. Very much in the future, like several gyms down the line. I'm not even at the stage yet where I can say I'm confident that we have 2 full-time members of the team yet. We've got 2 placeholders, one maybe to go with Grimash right now, and I'm sure my self-imposed Pokemon Stadium appearances later on in this playthrough are going to affect some of my decision-making processes. After all, in a regular single-player playthrough of a given generation, you don't really need to think all that hard about your team composition. Just have enough type variation to be able to use all the HMs in a given game, and you'll make it to the end regardless of what stats are on your Pokemon. You could literally go all the way to the end of the game with a Beedrill facing down the Elite Four and the champion with it. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, especially if you're a fan of the early game Pokemon, as opposed to the ones you start running into later on. Hell, I would probably be a bit of a hypocrite if I felt that way. There are a good number of Pokemon I would never put onto my team at all, regardless of if I like their design and evolution, simply because I see them way too late in the game, and I like feeling more attached to whoever is on my team by that point. It's one thing to replace someone from early in the team makeup with someone around the 5 or 6 gym mark. It's another thing entirely to replace a member of the team when there are no more gyms left to go through, just the Elite Four, or possibly or even further, and it's into the post-game material. Houndoom and Skarmory in this generation certainly suffer from that showing up way too late to earn a spot on the team. Well, Bellram has certainly done a good amount of training for one clip. Let's get some of the others to start leveling up. Trying to get everyone to Gramash's level 8 is probably going to be a waste of a good amount of time, but hey, I like having even levels in the team. Hell, a lot of Pokemon Let's players would probably just choose to skip over the grinding, assuming they have any at all in their playthrough. But hey, even the boring parts are part of the journey as a whole, in my opinion. I just need to think of things to say as we keep moving forward. We're still pretty early in this LP, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. For now, at least. Definitely appreciate the fact that the second generation introduced the experience bar we can see as we fight. It really makes it much less of a guessing game how much more training we need to do in order to level everyone up. Grabbing a Hoppip probably isn't a great idea for our team, but to be fair, this is the first grass type we've been able to find. Sure, the fact that it's got Splash as a move isn't very encouraging, but hey, Magikarp has the same issue as well, and that turns into a Gyarados later on. There's just quite a bit more effort than many people would be willing to get from useless to being an absolute beast for that one. Anyway, since it blows away with the wind, probably a good idea to call this girl Tumbleweed. We've got just enough letters to pull that off. Anyway, that should about do it for this clip. Good, we can restock on them then. As early on, we have a lot of catching to do. And apparently, Premier Balls aren't a thing just yet, so I'm still gonna have to keep grabbing balls by the tens.